We've just had an assault on our liberty that we haven't seen in our lifetime, in which politicians will spend as much, if not more, than our annual budget. This has been a huge assault on the economy. Bureaucrats are incompetent at knowing where the money needs to go. Only the free market can do that. As president, I would stop the bailouts and get repayments wherever possible from the people who have already gotten these bailouts. What they're doing now is they're setting up a long recovery session, just like we had in the 2008 bailouts of the banks. This is the same thing all over again. My number one issue is to cut spending, and it's even more important now. We really need to go on the offensive to drive down the spending before the catastrophe. We need to ramp up this attitude even more. Government spending kills jobs. Private money spent creates about twice as many jobs. This is how we create financial stability, and this is how we stabilize the dollar. Whenever they print money out of thin air, it devalues the dollar. It devastates people's savings, it devastates their retirement, and it gives disincentive to companies. So we need to stop this insanity now. Well, of course, every aspect of education is important, but the one I would like to address is the student debt crisis. Now, we all know that government loans artificially increase tuition. What a lot of politicians aren't talking about, though, is how the licensing laws and federal contracts create an artificial demand for degrees. So these are government dictated, not market dictated. For example, a request for proposal might say, well, we need 3 bachelor's degrees in electrical engineering. Private contracts never do this. I was involved in many private contracts, many RFPs when I was in the business world. Also in healthcare, people need a medical doctor degree just to treat the smallest of symptoms. So because of this artificial demand for certain degrees, students are taking on debt, parents are taking on debt, and yes, this increases tuition. So now the degree that you might not even need costs even more than it should. There are so many skills that can be learned on the job that government prevents the free market from doing. And we need to get rid of all these requirements, and we need to get the government out of it. We also need to get rid of the Department of Education, and I would eliminate that immediately. In 40 years, education hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse under the Department of Education. We really need to prepare our young people for the future, and the private market does a better job than the government does. So the healthcare, let me start. So the healthcare in this country is a special interest-driven, poorly run system depriving people of high quality care. As president, I would work to remove every government interference in the healthcare industry, moving us toward a 100% free market. Now, of course, we need to shut down the FDA, and that's especially important with what's going on right now. Without the FDA, we would have had tens of millions of test kits. You could just walk in and buy them, or you could get a test kit without a prescription. What we had was test kits made in this country, sent to other countries that we couldn't even use. Also, drug creation is also highly suppressed. Yes, we absolutely need to have a free market. I was in a third-party debate last March in which a socialist said, we got to get the profit motive out of medicine. Doctors are just doing it for profit. And my response was, if you look at the LASIK industry and you look at cosmetic surgery, you see prices go down, quality go up, because it's free market. So I said, you better hope that your doctor wants to go after the profit, because that's how you get innovation. That's how you get lower prices, because they have to compete against other doctors. They have to offer better quality because they have to offer better quality than their competitors. If we had a free market system, people could afford to go to the doctor. They could go to a clinic at 11 o'clock at night and not have to put up with the emergency room. they would get much higher quality with dramatically lower costs. In fact, healthcare would be so low that people would only want or need catastrophic insurance, similar to what we have in car insurance. And that's what we need to move to right now. So I 100% agree with the Libertarian Party platform of open borders. In fact, I'd like to point out that I agree with the platform on every plank. And as the candidate, I would put forth every plank in the platform. So with immigration, whenever we have immigrants come into our country, it energizes the economy. Now, there are many libertarians even who agree with Milton Friedman, who said, well, you can either have open borders or you can have a welfare state, but you can't have both. And since we have a welfare state, you cannot have open borders. Actually, that's not what the statistics show. If you look at the empirical evidence, if you look at the dollars that come in, that is just plain wrong. And besides, what a lot of people don't realize is that we already have a little bit of a stopgap there, because programs such as TANF and SNAP and Medicaid often have a 5-year waiting period. So you don't have that problem. Also, statistics have shown that the overall net effect is positive, that with each new immigrant, we get about $260,000 added to the economy. And another concern of people is crime. And it turns out that people who are born in another country and move here actually have an incarceration rate that's about 1/3 lower than people who are born in this country. So this encourages people we want in our country, people who are independent, self-reliant, who grow our country strong and competitive. And it gives our country a diversity that our country can appreciate, that Americans just can get a pure joy of learning about other cultures and coming face to face and working with people from other countries. And I'd like to also point out that I'm actually the grandchild of immigrants. Thank you. Criminal injustice has been going on for far too long in this country, and it will end with me. As president, my priority is to end the war on drugs and get everyone out of prison who should not be there because they did not commit a real crime. No victim, no crime. The drug war is morally wrong. So on my first day of office, I will pardon all nonviolent so-called criminals in federal prison, not only for drug use, but also sex workers, simple gun ownership, and anything else, any other act that's peaceful and between consenting adults. These prisoners will return to their families. Families will be strengthened. Fathers will be able to support their families, help raise their kids, and be a role model. Also, returning people to their families will make room in our jails for murderers, rapists, and other violent criminals, people who have committed a real crime who do need to be locked up. Ending the war on drugs and even going into sex work and the other things, legalizing them will make the streets safer. We're not going to have any shootouts because we don't see shootouts between, for instance, CVS and Walgreens over who's encroaching on whose corner for selling alcohol. Also, our schools would be safer. We don't see alcohol store owners trying to sell gin to students at high schools or junior highs because the profit just isn't there. And yes, what we put in our own body is our business. But often when we hear people say that, we think of marijuana, heroin, and so forth. But we've also got other drugs, such as psilocybin, which is shown to improve depression. So not only would this save lives, it would also improve their quality of living. We need to get rid of these so-called victimless crimes. You can call taxation theft or extortion or whatever. The point is all taxes are coercive. They're immoral, they're wrong, and they hurt individuals and society as a whole. As president, I would end the income tax. The income tax is the worst of the worst. So there'd be no more harassing audits from the IRS. We hear so many people from the left talk about how evil big corporations are. Well, what I'd like to ask them is, if they open up their mail, would they rather have an envelope with a return address of a large company like Microsoft or Apple, or a letter with the return address of the IRS? Getting a letter from the IRS can be terrifying. Also, there would be no more disincentives for productivity. Less money in the pockets of politicians means more money in the hands of private industry that can create jobs. Cutting taxes means more jobs. And right now, a lot of people today are wondering if they're even going to have a job again coming up here soon. It looks really bleak. Without an income tax, each American family would save on average, and this is a conservative estimate, about $12,000 a year. And just think of everything that you could buy with that. Most families could get a new car every few years, or maybe replace that about to die furnace so that when you go to sleep at night, you don't have to worry about waking up in the middle of the night cold. You could take your family on a nice vacation. Taxes are coercive. They have no place in a free society, and we can handle things better, and the free market can handle anything that comes along better than the government.
How do you balance protecting religious freedom and the liberty of the LGBT community to live out their pursuit of happiness?
I'm afraid I really don't understand that question, in that the federal government really has no place in deciding religion or deciding who can marry who and so forth. Marriage laws are all at the state and local level. I would like to point out a few things, though, that would to demonstrate to people, because one of my jobs as the presidential nominee is to explain how the private market can do a better job than the government. And my favorite point as far as the LGBTQ community is that the Walt Disney Company, Disney World, offered same-sex marriage benefits in the early 90s, long before the federal government did, or state governments, long before it was regularly done in government. So once again, when a private company has to compete with other companies to get the best possible employees, they start offering things like that. I also like to point out to young people, a lot of people don't realize that if we look at the left, because a lot of times LGBTQ are from the left, that when Barack Obama was running for office the first time, and when Hillary Clinton was, neither one of them were for gay marriage. And when I tell this to young people, first of all, they're pretty shocked. It's like, well, why not? What do you mean they weren't for it? And I explain that, well, because their interest is in votes. That's what they are. They are political animals. They don't care about people's rights. What they want are votes. And in fact, if you look at Dick Cheney, he was totally against gay marriage until his daughter came out as gay. And now all of a sudden he's for gay marriage. Libertarians are different in that we are for everybody's rights, regardless of our own personal situation. We are for individual liberty.
What issue will most likely draw Republican, Democrat, and independent voters to choose your platform? How could you possibly win one state without the money or resources that these other parties have?
Wow, that's a lot of questions for 2 minutes. So first of all, I would say that probably I would emphasize different issues for different audiences, and politicians always do that. For the left, I would emphasize that we want to bring our troops home. We want America to be one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. We want to save lives. We don't want to go over there and support foreign dictators. For the right, I would emphasize healthcare. Healthcare is a life or death situation, and the right side is absolutely correct in that we don't want a single payer system. However, the problem with the Republicans is they have just as many cronies, as many special interests as the left have. So they're not going to solve the problem anymore. And as far as not having money, we have to do that by having a message that is mainstream enough, not by softening our principles, but we have to present the message in a way that excites the American voters. You know, for far too long, libertarians have put out campaigns there that excite themselves. They talk about things that interest them. What we need to start doing is we need to start addressing topics that excite the voters. And one thing that I always point out is that in the 1970s type libertarian, we often gave the message of it's our money, we should be able to do what we want with it. Instead, we need to turn around and show how the libertarian platform is the most compassionate out there, that the free market can handle it better, not because it's our money and we want to keep it, but because the free market will serve them better. And we have to show them how the free market works better in all situations.